October 5th or something? Okay, thanks. Once I get more info, I'll send it to you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sarpy County Board of Equalization meeting. Today is September 27th, 2022. It's 3 o'clock. Copy of the Nebraska open meeting rules are on the north wall. We have all we have 4 commissioners present. Commissioner Warren's absent. Our county administrator, Dan Hoynes. Representing the clerk today, we have Desiree Markuski.
Close enough.
Did I get it wrong again?
Makoski.
Markuski.
Yep.
Oh, man. Okay, well, welcome, Desiree.
Thank you.
We have our county assessor, Dan Pittman, our county treasurer, Chase Jones. If you would, silence your cell phones, and let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, two items on the consent.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Klug, second by Burmeister. Discussion? Please vote.
Ayes 4, absent Warren.
One item on the regular agenda is a tax correction, 17050. Questions for Dan on that? Motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Klug, second by Commissioner Burmeister. Please vote.
Ayes 4, absent Warren.
Okay, all agenda items having been addressed as published, the Board of Equalization is adjourned. Okay, welcome to the Board of Commissioners meeting. It's 27th of September at 3:02 p.m. Nebraska open meeting rules are on the north wall. We have 4 commissioners present. Commissioner Warren is absent. Our county administrator, Dan Hoynes, is here, as well as Desiree from the county clerk's office. Commissioners' comments.
None today.
None, thank you.
And
None, sir.
Okay. 5 items on the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
second.
Motion by Klug, second by Mixon. Discussion? Please vote.
Ayes 4, absent Warren.
Okay, on the regular agenda, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 interlocal agreements that are listed as public hearings, but they're not. We didn't advertise them as such. So I will read them generally all into the record. We'll have one discussion on all of them, and then we'll vote on them separately. 5.1 is Resolution 251. That's the interlocal. And all of these are for public safety software or IT support. So 251 is for public safety for software for the city of La Vista. And I should point out that all these commence on 1 October and run through September 30th of 2025. Item 5.2 is Resolution 254. That's for information technology to the city of La Vista. 5.3 is Resolution 253. That's for public safety software for the city of Bellevue. Item 5.4 is 256, Resolution 256. That's for IT support to the city of Bellevue. Item 5.5 is 252. That's for public safety software to the city of Papillion. And 5.6 is 255 resolution, which is for IT services to the city of Papillion. Mark Walters, CIO. Welcome,
Afternoon, Board. Yes, all 6 of these are interrelated. Every 3 years, generally, we've had interlocal agreements with the 3 larger cities in the county La Vista, Papillion, and Bellevue. We've had interlocal agreements to provide IT support as far back as about 2001. And we maintain these interlocal agreements to provide all the IT support for the cities. So the agreements that you see for IT support mean that we're providing all the IT support, including information security, operations and networking, and then the general everyday end user support. Any of the interlocal agreements that you see that are about public safety software are just a vehicle to allow us to charge back to the cities the expenditures that we utilize when we're providing software services for the agencies. Generally, that's their police departments and their fire departments that are using mobile data computers and some of the capacities to that software. Other than that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Questions for Mark? Any comments? I appreciate your work, Mark, and the work of your staff of getting all these agreements in place. It's a win-win for the county and for the cities.
Yep.
So thanks for all your efforts there. Okay, we'll start with 5.1, which is Resolution 251.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Klug, second by Burmeister. Any further comments? Please vote.
Ayes 4, absent Warren.
Okay, 5.2 is Resolution 254, IT support for the city of La Vista.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Klug, second by Burmeister. I don't have a poll.
I gotcha. Ayes 4, absent Warren.
Thank you. 5.3 is Resolution 253, that's public safety software for Bellevue.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Klug, second by Burmeister. Please vote.
Ayes 4, absent Warren.
5.4 is IT services support for Bellevue.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, motion by Klug, second by Burmeister on 256. Please vote.
Ayes 4, absent Warren.
Okay, 5.5 is Resolution 252 for public safety software for Papillion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Klug, second by Burmeister. Discussion? Please vote.
Ayes 4, absent Warren.
And 5.6 is 255, which is IT support for Papillion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Klug, second by Burmeister. Please vote.
Ayes 4, absent Warren.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mark. 5.7 is Resolution 259. It's agreement between the owner and the construction manager at risk with the White's Company for Warner Park capital improvements. Beth Garber, Assistant County Administrator.
Thank you, Chairman. On August 19th, 3 proposals were received for the Warner Park Capital Improvements Project. The evaluation committee interviewed all three construction managers, including Leader, Turner, and White's Construction, and recommended proceeding with White's Construction. Today, the board is being asked to approve the 2 agreements that will define the fees of the project, the basis of payments, and the general condition. We'll come back in a few weeks with the first amendment that will define the guaranteed maximum price. So just for a little background, this project includes the minor league baseball improvements for this fiscal year, along with this year's annual capital improvements, which include the right field entrance ramp, concrete repairs, and the office carpet replacement. These projects were determined by both Warner Park and Sarpy County as priority projects.
Questions?
I had a question for Bonnie on this topic. Did you have a minute to look at that issue, Bonnie? The lease issue? Okay. Do we have time to table this a week? Or does that, yeah, sorry, Beth.
We do have a tight time frame for the project with the steel order and the timing for White's to get the project done. I would be reluctant without, I know.
If you just wait presentation on legislative stuff, I'll get an answer to you. In the next
Are you,
few
are you pretty confident it's okay.
Yeah.
We can just wait a
Yep.
minute if that's okay, if we,
Okay.
till the end of the agenda today.
Okay.
What was the concern? I missed it completely.
Yeah, I didn't say what it was. I just wanted to be sure that the lease agreement provides a mechanism to repay it if the lease is breached before the end of the term, because we're paying $1 million to
Oh, I
improve
see.
the park.
I got you.
So that was the question, is whether or not there's a protection in the lease agreement.
Okay.
And all of this was just for the Major League Baseball issues that have been brought up, correct? Not
So-
for the soccer piece?
So a portion of it is for Major League Baseball improvements, including female staff, the locker room, laundry room, players' lounge, batting cage, and batter's eye improvements. And there's about $150,000 for annual capital improvements, which we do every year. We do about $150,000 per the lease in annual capital improvements at the stadium. We just combine them for efficiency.
Okay, is there any of it for the soccer, though?
No.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
So can we just hold it till the end of the agenda? Do we need a particular motion?
Till the end of the agenda?
That's what
Okay.
Bonnie said.
That's coming up pretty quick. But we'll hold it.
Depends on how long the lobbyists talk.
We'll hold that and move on to item 5.8, which is disbursement requisition 25 for our highway allocation fund, $342,136 and 37 cents for Connect Sarpy. Bill Conley, CFO.
Good afternoon. This disbursement requisition is for $342,136 payable to Hawkins out of the original $52.6 million Series 2021 highway allocation bond. Of note, the reason why we're bringing this to you specifically is that this is the final disbursement on this bond, as it will deplete the construction fund. So we will have spent all of the $52.6 million. And just wanted to remind you that this $52.6 million bond was issued just 15 months ago. It has an all-in total interest cost of 1.7%. So if we could rewind time, we would go back and get more of that kind of funding. The annual debt service on these bonds is about $3.1 million a year, and was and is included in our long-term planning for funding of road projects in the 1 and 6 road program and our long-range cash forecast for public works. The funds, the $52.6 million were used for the Connect Sarpy project and have enabled that project to move much quicker and at less cost than doing this work over multiple years. I would be happy to answer any questions you have on this agenda item. I don't know if you want Scott Bovick, he can speak more to the use of the funds on the Connect Sarpy if you need that. But at this point, I'll pause and we'll open it up for questions.
Questions?
I don't have any specific question other than if Scott or you, Bill, and maybe it's more for Scott and Dan. Obviously, we spent a lot of money for this intersection, and just kind of the outlook of what's already happening there or planning to happen there. So, I mean, it's really the payback time.
Sure. As we've talked about before on this project, there's a lot of development occurring in that area, and so the county will receive contributions from development. We typically don't bill that out until the project's done. So as we've completed phases, we're starting to do some of that billing with developments. Probably getting into this fall and early next spring, we'll be really aggressive with that as the 180th Street corridor gets completed. So that's all going well. And you also may remember that the county entered into an interlocal agreement with the city of Gretna so that any of the arterial street improvement program fees that are collected in that area by development, Gretna is going to collect those and remit those to the county. I think we've received 2 quarterly payments so far and another one due in October. And so development really hasn't occurred because they're waiting for some of those corridors to be open. But if you drive out there, you can see the 180th Street, Giles Corridor, Cornhusker, and you can see the infrastructure that's ready to go next spring for some of the development to start building, houses and commercial development.
Yeah. And I'm not looking just at all the fees, also the economic development, that portion, because I know it's coming in. I know they're looking, and they've already probably submitted plans to the planning department to move forward with their projects.
Yeah, I think when we looked at the entire area, we kind of called it a 9 square mile area. I think looking at the current valuation of that area was about $4 billion, and we could tell that about 60% of that area was still undeveloped. So we're probably looking at an additional $5 billion in actual property value investment there. And obviously we get property tax, city gets property tax, other economic activity that's occurring. And so again, I think, as Sarpy County builds road infrastructure, it truly is, if you build it, they will come. And so we're already seeing that return on investment. Again, I think some of those developments are waiting for us to go, hey, this portion of the road's open, and then they're gonna start building right away. And probably every single piece of property that wasn't developed when we started this project is now in the hands of a developer. So before too long, that whole area will be built out. And Denny Wilson and his team have done a lot of work on making sure that coordinating with Olson and Hawkins, and then there's just been lots of coordination and collaboration with the school district, which is growing, the city of Gretna, which is growing, the development community. The NRD has plans for some lake amenities out there. So it's all coming together. But one more year of construction, so we still have quite a bit of money to spend, but it's been a good project.
All right, thanks, Scott.
Comments, questions? I think it was the deal of the century, 1.7%. When Treasury bills are over 4% for a 2-year note today. So great job on that. Appreciate your work, Bill. Motion, please.
Motion to approve?
Second. Or Gary.
No, you're fine. You're doing such a good job earlier, I don't want to interfere.
You just got to be quicker.
Motion by Commissioner Klug, second by Burmeister. Please vote.
Ayes 4, absent Warren.
Okay, item 6.1 is a discussion of our legislative agenda for 2023 legislative session. We have our county lobbyist from Catalyst Public Affairs, led by Tim Gay, here to give us an update.
Yeah, thank you. Joined with Caitlin Reese and Melissa Fike. I wanted to introduce Melissa real quick, and I'll let her introduce herself. But anyway, many of you I know have been on Zoom calls or met with Melissa already, but for those of you that haven't, we figured today would be a good day to bring her down from Lincoln, introduce her, and have her take part in our conversation. So she's a key part of helping us all out, working as a team for you, and I'll let you talk about your past because it's impressive in government. So we've known each other.
Well, I'm not
a long
sure.
time.
Yeah, so I started in the legislature on the legislative side. So I had 7 years there. I started with Senator Phil Erdman, who worked alongside with Tim. So, and then from there, I went up to the Ricketts administration. I was one of his senior policy advisors. So Tim, luckily, when I was looking at having a family and those hours get kind of tough, I was looking for a change, and he was kind enough to give me an opportunity on this side of the picture on politics. So it's been a learning experience, but it's been great, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, welcome to the team. Look forward to working with you on this upcoming. Where are you from originally?
Originally, Gearing, Nebraska.
Gearing?
Yeah, class of '99.
That's in Nebraska.
Really?
Yeah.
You know, it's just kind of traditional, and I hate to see you break the precedents, but I usually like to hear your high school fight song. Would you like to bark out a
I don't
few
know that I
verses
can
of that?
remember it, to
Could
be
you,
honest.
could you guys like sing out a few verses of that? No, welcome aboard.
I hope nobody's watching from here. Because I literally don't
Actually, you're
remember.
being broadcast all over the internet. So, no,
You'd be like, great, thanks, Melissa. You should have been back to the reunion.
it's great to have you on board. Thank you.
you.
Jim?
How do we, can you all see the presentation?
No, not right now.
Yeah.
Is there, how do I share? The PowerPoint's on here. and
There you go.
There we go.
There
Thank
it
you. It's like
is.
there has to be a
We
button.
did it.
Here, I'll drive. You go
All
ahead.
right, thanks, perfect. Excuse me.
Go ahead.
All right, well, first of all, we wanted to, this is just an overview. As you know, every year there's 600 to 800 bills, so we're kind of guessing here of what's going to happen. And I know Commissioner Mixon knows that all too well as he sits for days through these bills. But anyway, the things we're looking at coming into next year for you is we're going to get a new governor after 8 years, of course. So that's a huge, huge thing for everybody. Several of the senators who we've been working with closely are running for other offices. One would be very important, the Speaker, who had a couple of years left. There's a good chance he might get elected. I don't even know if he's an opponent in the general election. If he does, he has a good chance of winning, let's put it that way. Senator Lathrop, the Judiciary Chair, which I know Commissioner Burmeister and all of you pay attention to because all those issues that happen in the Judiciary Committee, he's leaving. So we'll have a new chair there. He had some experience. He decided not to run again, so they will be choosing a new Judiciary Chair. Appropriations, same thing. We've lost Senator Stinner, who's now gone, but he was, I think, for 4 years Appropriations Chair, and he had been on the committee, a very intelligent banker. So we're losing a lot of people, and when they are gone, then we're going to have more appointments. I assume that, I don't want to make an assumption, it'll probably happen before Governor Ricketts leaves, I would think. So they resign and then they appoint. So we'll have 2, maybe 3 gubernatorial appointments. You've seen that one already. Congressman Flood was replaced up in Norfolk, Nebraska. So, and then we've got 13 new senators, a lot of open seats running who are term limited out. So we've been out and about meeting with people, attending fundraisers as appropriate with different people, both Republicans and Democrats. One key race here is happening in Sarpy County, out towards the Gretna area. You know, the district, Holdcroft and Angie Lawrenson are in a battle, but that gets you to 6 senators who have a primary responsibility for Sarpy County. So as we always say, it's important we all try to keep in contact with them, and I really appreciate you've all done a great job of that. I know there's a ton of communication that happens. So with those changes going on, it's going to be exciting for us too to learn, probably frustrating at times too, but it's kind of exciting to see all the new things happening and what will or will not happen. We do have a link on there that you can click on for the legislative calendar. It's always tentative, but it gives you the idea. It goes from January to early June because it's a long budgeting session. So those always they stretch that out. 90 days stretches out to 6 months. I don't know how they do it, but anyway, so it's a very long session coming up, and we'll talk later at the end about how we think we can manage that better with all of you. So I'll turn it over to Melissa a little bit.
Sure. Thanks, Tim. Okay, so we've been following some interim study resolutions that we think Sarpy County may be interested in, starting with County Operations and Courts, LR 330 by Senator Linehan. This is her interim study to determine what percentage should be used to forecast revenue when preparing fiscal notes. And then she wants to determine if that's the same number and process that political subdivisions and state agencies should use as well when trying to prepare their fiscal notes. That is scheduled for a hearing on November 4th at 11 a.m. in the State Capitol, room 1113. Then we have LR 399 by Senator Lathrop. That's his study to review and identify what judicial resources are necessary to expand problem-solving courts across the state. So I think in particular he's looking for funding necessary for doing so. That has a hearing scheduled for October 4th at 9 o'clock in the morning, and that is in State Capitol Room 1113 as well. And then LR 409 by Senator Arch. This stemmed from LB 921 that we had this past session, and we'll talk about that later on in the presentation. But Senator Arch had concern about that bill and said this isn't the end, and so he introduced this interim study to examine the Department of Health and Human Services capacity and resources to treat individuals who have been committed to the Department for Restoration of Competency treatment. And this has a hearing scheduled for November 4th at 9 a.m., and this will be in State Capitol Room 1510. And the last statistics that we have, when we talked with you all, our average length of stay in Sarpy County awaiting transfer to LRC is 129 days, and the cost for stays over 30 days was $99,000. So that is an issue that we're going to be watching and following closely. We'll be present and keeping you all posted
So
on.
I should probably know this, but what's the difference between a legislative resolution and a legislative bill?
Yeah, well, the resolution is just a study. We found a problem, let's look further into it and do a
So
resolution.
that'll
It's a chance-
eventually turn into something?
Chance for the public to come and add their 2 cents worth, and it helps the senator develop a bill. And then also, I think it gives you a little cover too, if you're a senator, say, hey, I had a resolution on this and I didn't hear from you guys, or whatever. So we watch all these. These are, of course, we're going to attend them and pay attention. But, so these key ones are how they could affect you, like the law where people can't get a hearing in court or some of these things. So
Okay.
all these are things that we thought would be of interest, but they don't have to have a hearing. But as Melissa said, several will. She's going to get to a few others that don't have a hearing. That's good though too. We just write letters or have a meeting with the senator and say, here's our point of view on that. So these all 90% of the times will lead to a bill. They're just kind of getting good information in a public way too.
The committees kind of get together and talk about information they want for what they're going to bring at the next session. Continuing on, property taxes. We have LR 387 by Senator Day. That's her interim study to review statutes relating to homestead exemptions. This one's not scheduled for hearing. As you guys know, she had a bill this last session that our 1080 was attached onto. There were some issues that she had with it. I think it was a little bit of confusion between what she intended to do, how drafters drafted it, ended up with a fiscal impact. There was a lot going on there. We have that history for you if you want it, but I won't go into it here. So she did bring an interim study to kind of further discuss that and talk about that. And I think it's primarily going to focus on expanding eligibility. So that's what her bill intended. And then we have for military and veterans issues, LR 388 by Senator Day is her interim study to examine the rating and combined rating system that the Department of Veterans Affairs uses to determine compensation payments and access to other benefits. Sorry, I'll hop back up. 387 is not scheduled for a hearing. 389 is not scheduled for a hearing at this time either. So likely those are just issues that they'll discuss maybe amongst themselves, or she'll be reaching out and having meetings on her own, and then you'll see that produce something later on in the session.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about bills that we can expect to be reintroduced next session that were, so at the end of the session, it was the end of a 2-year session, so all bills that didn't advance were indefinitely postponed or essentially dead at the end of session. So any bill that didn't pass needs to be reintroduced come January, and they have 10 days to do that starting from the first day of session. So these are some that we think didn't get across the finish line last year that we think might be reintroduced this session. So the first is LR 263CA, which is a constitutional amendment. This got to select file and then they ran out of time and it didn't advance. Was a bill from Senator Blood that would basically, it would go to the ballot for the voters to decide whether or not that the legislature should reimburse political subdivisions for new and underfunded and unfunded mandates. The next bill is LB 853. Melissa talked a little bit about this one. I think there was some confusion about how it was drafted, so I imagine they'll try and clean that up and reintroduce that next session. I know in a conversation we recently had with Commissioner Burmeister that there's been some different eligibility issues that have come to light that are very narrow and might only affect a handful of people, but her bill might be an opportunity to really address those issues since it's looking at eligibility versus our bill, the other bill we worked on, LB 1080, which it'll have a new bill number, but right now we're going to call it LB 1080, which is really just looking at people who already have qualify, how long are they? It's an application question as opposed to an eligibility question. So I think it makes sense to keep those two issues separate for introduction, and then we'll see kind of how everything shakes out in the session, whether those end up being connected together, because that's the best way to get both of them passed. We'll just have, there's a lot that has to be written between now and then for us to know what the exact strategy is. But we've been meeting with Senator Sanders. I think we're in very good shape to reintroduce the bill, and I think I'm hopeful that we'll get an early hearing and kind of get that process going early on with LB 1080, whatever the bill number ends up being. Okay, and then a couple others. So LB 921, which we talked a little bit about earlier. So the underlying bill was different than what ended up passing. So originally, Class 4 felonies would be served in county jail under LB 921 as introduced. As it was amended, it included several provisions, including dealing with the issue of restoration for competency and how long individuals were remaining in county jails. Often their condition was deteriorating because if this is a person in mental health crisis, a county jail, even if it's the greatest county jail, isn't necessarily the best place for them to get the treatment. So they've added some additional costs that the state would have to pay if someone stays in a county jail facility awaiting transfer over 30 days, again, trying to create maybe some different incentives for the department to get people into the Lincoln Regional Center earlier, and has prioritized some additional beds in the Lincoln Regional Center for those in county jails waiting for restoration, waiting for a spot. There's a lot of different priorities when it comes to LRC beds, so the county population are just one of them. And I know that so far this bill has not been implemented. There's been some holdups with the department, so I'm sure that will be discussed at the hearing on the interim study that's really looking further into how we can address this problem. All right.
Okay, other issues of concern. So back to inheritance tax last session. So the legislature, we have LB 310 by Senator Clements that passed that reduced the inheritance tax rates and increased the threshold before inheritance tax was applied. We are assuming that we're going to see some more come from Senator Clements. He's kind of been a leader on the front lines of this legislation, and so we think we'll be seeing that come back again, and I know that we're following that closely. Homestead exemption, again, senators continue to introduce bills that would cap the amount of reimbursement to counties that they receive for a homestead exemption program, and so we are working to be prepared for similar legislation next session. And then prison overcrowding, last session, Senator Lathrop introduced LB 921 that Caitlin just talked about that would have shifted those serving time for Class 4 felonies sentenced to county jails. So given the lack of staffing that we're struggling with, that, you know, we can have beds, and I think that's what the agency is kind of struggling with. They have open beds, but they don't have the staff for it. And so how can we use this to try to solve our problem? And it's going to take a lot of discussion with all parties to try to figure that out in I think, the best way for Nebraska. So, Tim?
All right, so those issues of concern are all huge financial issues to you, as you understand that, of course. So, but anyway, those are just a few. Who knows what else will be out there. So I did want to think, I was just standing here, I did want to let you know, so this is, on your account, you probably have about 45 years of legislative experience here, you young ladies, I know. But anyway, so it's kind of nice to have these two do a lot of great work for me and with me, I should say. They dragged me along. But we talked earlier, Senator Burmeister, Senator Kelly, and Dan Hoynes, about possibly how we can do a better job communicating with you, and Commissioner Mixon, I know, gets in the front lanes on this a lot, but we're saying, you know, going into next year, what's better that's a good use of your time and our time, and that we know where we're at when we prioritize bills or whatever. So we're looking at holding like weekly meetings in January with whoever you want on those legislative team. Zoom call, whatever. We'll come here, or Zoom, whatever. But as these bills get introduced, we've got to read all of them before we can give you proper answers. But some pop up and it's like, well, where's that going to go? It's like, I don't know yet. And then that also give a time, if we do that, for Commissioner Mixon, if you're still on that NACO board, he can then have a better understanding of what you all feel. So to do that, then after the bills get introduced, do a bi-weekly meeting. We're just kind of keeping in touch. We don't want it to come, your time is very valuable, so we don't want it to be just a discussion, hey, what's going on, political thing. So we can get right to the business of these are the bills. You can do your prioritization or whatever and decide what's super important to you or not. So we'll know after those first 10 days, which the first 10 days usually is about third week of January. So it's kind of a slower process. We're just saying slow it down, take a better look at it. We'd then come several times, and we can't always guarantee all three of us would be here, but whoever could come, whether it's Caitlin or me and Caitlin or me and Melissa, whoever, to come to at least 3 times every other month, early, mid, whatever. We'll come anytime, don't get me wrong, but in order to kind of be in line 3 times for sure on that. The board resolutions, like I say, part of this, I'm sure you probably heard, when NACO looks at their bills, it really helps to say, what are they going to prioritize and be on? So if we know they're doing something, we can do something other that you really have a priority on. So I think that's kind of key too, if we slow it down, don't you think? It would be very helpful to you as you do that. So, and then this is just an idea. You can discuss it amongst yourselves, however you want to do this. But if let's say Commissioner Burmeister, she has a good handle on all these judicial things, of course, being an attorney, that maybe she could handle some of those that we know to talk to her, of course, on the homestead exemptions and all that. So maybe that would be one. And maybe, or whoever's on ENSA board or whatever, we'll let you decide. But just so we're not having, everyone's getting all these emails, because you get swamped with emails. I think it probably gets confusing for Dan to kind of say, what are we doing, Bill? Like, who's doing what? Because these get very intricate on the bills. So that's what maybe we can kind of see if we can wade through that this year. So, but other than that, you know, I don't know, do you have a legislative committee now, or are you thinking of?
No, but I think,
you don't need to create new ones, but.
I just think that we should do Zoom, first of all, because you guys are busy.
Yep.
Don't want you to drive down to Papillion
Yeah.
for a meeting. But probably, I would just think our NACO rep and our chairman, whoever,
Yeah.
should probably be the 2
Yep. And then,
EOCs for that meeting.
you know, testifying too, that's another thing. You've had that experience many times.
Well, you know, I really want to expand the aperture.
Yeah.
I would like to see the aperture expanded so Commissioner Klug and Commissioner Mixon can see what 5 minutes of fame really feels like. They go down in front of there, watch the lights light up in front of you, and,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
Gong Show Hook come out.
Well, but as you
But
know,
the
you gotta,
the Don Kelly loves that.
I don't think I'm welcome down there anymore, but maybe I am.
yeah, but when you're testifying, you want to know about that bill, because you can get a lot of different questions, and it's not fair to send somebody that's not really prepared on that issue
Right,
to answer
exactly.
questions, or even talk to our local senators. It's just hard to cover all this stuff, so we want to kind of get you all educated up on here's what's going on, and then you can give your point of view. And I'm sure there'll be other things. One thing too, I think we forgot, but they'll probably look at this bill again. This is at when you have those public meetings that you just held. Yeah, so this is the Platt Institute. I don't know if you get, but there've been a lot of those going out to attend these meetings, but they'll probably be tweaking that because they're kind of following up on that. And I know NACO's going to pay close attention as well on how it can be better. And everybody's looking at that, school boards and whatever. So however that goes next year, I think you guys, I saw it, we all got our statements. I think it's a good job for the first time personally, but So everyone's going to learn from that. That'll be probably tweaked a little bit too, so.
So I think one thing, Tim, that would be helpful is we have a tri-county meeting coming up in November,
Yeah, 16th.
and maybe do an after action after we meet with the other counties, see if we can develop some synergy there
Yeah,
going into the session. Make our priority their priorities would be ideal, and vice versa, I'm sure, from their standpoint, so.
yep.
Maybe something early in December,
Yeah,
just,
we'll
just before the
do whatever you
session
want.
kicks off, and
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, we're always open to do any of those things, and it's always better right before. But like I say, you throw a dart and you think, here's what's gonna happen, and most of these, I'm pretty confident are gonna happen.
so logistically, you're still in the hotel, your office?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay.
So we actually, yep, we're in the, and you've been there, and
Yeah, oh
if you
yeah,
come
very nice.
testify, it's plenty of
Convenient.
room to be educated and relax before you have to, because sometimes you sit around forever before you can testify.
So are they still doing a lot of construction down at the Capitol?
Yes,
So
unfortunately.
it's gonna be pretty messed up still again this year?
Yep, I think that, how many years, do you know?
Yeah.
At least 2 more years,
Yeah,
I
we've
think.
got we have at least 2 more years.
Yeah.
We can always work. The NACO office is right there, and they
Yeah,
usually
it's-
have some parking in the back that,
They're sort of like bookends in between the Capitol and the middle, you know? One to the south, one to the north,
Yep.
so.
Yeah, so, but anyway, a lot of things gonna be happening, like I say, a lot of change is gonna happen with term limits going on, and any questions?
no questions. I just have a comment, and if you could highlight this, because this is the frustration that we deal with a legislature that will sign bills into law, and then we have to deal with them, and then especially unfunded. And both of them are on the presentation you just had. It's 310, where Senator Clements wants to eliminate the inheritance tax. My thing, if you can give a brief how the inheritance tax came about, and then there was something else that changed where it was an unfunded mandate that we ended up, the unfunded mandates that we, in Senator Blood's bill about the unfunded mandates, the comparison of the two, what I'm basically trying to say here is the inheritance tax is something that the state said, okay, well, we don't really want to do away with it. Well, they do, but it was then pawned off to the counties to say, okay, yeah, these unfunded mandates you talk about, you have the inheritance tax to take that.
Yeah.
Now they're trying to eliminate the inheritance tax. So it's critical that we get the bill passed, that
The unfunded mandates?
the unfunded mandate bill. But there was a little history about it. I don't know if, and maybe I'm thinking there was, if anybody wants to talk about
Well,
it.
she's been studying this, the inheritance tax, just to see where we're at, but there's a lot to it. But
Just
how
briefly.
much time does Bonnie need here? We'll see.
She's back.
But anyway, but that's a big, broad subject. The total unfunded mandates that you talked about Carol Blood having, that's going to be a challenge. It was last year too. That's kind of the reason too. It ran out of steam. It didn't get scheduled until very late. And then when it got rescheduled, it just didn't have the votes. So it just kind of fell apart. I think those unfunded mandates are one by one, and don't add new ones. I know you don't want to hear that, but that's really what it is. The good news is other people are talking about unfunded mandates. The inheritance tax is used, of course, when you have an emergency or this or that or whatever. Everyone uses it differently, so there's broad discretion how you can use it. I know they're going to take it away, I get it, but that's the message that probably has to get out to people, that it's not just being wasted, it's used for these kind of things. And if we can't do it, you're going to do it. Melissa and I attended a hearing with NACO. It's a joint meeting, and it's crazy what some of the smaller counties, how much they'd have to raise their taxes if they lost that inheritance tax. So I think we're going to have a whole new discussion on it this year. Do you want to talk about other states, what other states do and don't? do?
Yeah, I
One-
don't have the, yeah, I don't have
No,
the
but,
specifics, but
I
like.
mean, we don't
so-
have it right in front of us, but.
Yeah, some of the arguments that we heard during session that you'll see is that there's not a whole lot of states in the country that have the inheritance tax. But when you look at that, you're also looking at other states that have they have a state tax, or they even have other forms of revenue coming into the state that Nebraska isn't blessed to have. So you have to look at, you can't compare us to a lot of other states that have huge tourism and other things that bring in revenue to the state. And so we've kind of looked at some of that. NACO has done some really good research too on kind of what that looks like, our counties, and I'm trying to get more of a view, because they like to compare us across the country. There's only like 7 states that have inheritance tax, and then there's only 1 state that has inheritance and a state tax. And sorry for that, I can't remember if it's Maryland but anyway, we can get that information to you. But I know in the state of Nebraska, and I think, I'm going to look this up, Tim, because back in your days as a senator, we got rid of the estate tax and to keep the inheritance tax, so counties had a form of funding for emergency purposes. So, we need to kind of step back and look at why we did things we did back then and not undo what we did. A lot of it too, like with competency restoration, same thing. Like, we're looking at community-based services. We wanted to get away from, institutionalized care. Now we're trying to push back to institutionalized care instead of community-based services, and we just do this circle. So I think identifying that kind of thought process and that circle as to where Nebraska came to having inheritance tax in the first place, getting rid of the estate tax, and having that for the counties is important, and that's something we can have for you guys too.
That's my point. My point is, it's there. There was something that allowed it, and now all of a sudden you have Senator Clements leading the charge to take it away without the state basically funding the takeaway now
Yeah.
out of their
Yeah.
tax portion.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's something we'll look into. I don't know it's been around a long time.
Yeah.
So we'll find the initial legislation. I'm sure somebody will.
I think too, people don't know the detail, right? So
Yeah.
if you're giving money to your immediate family member, they get a $100,000 exemption apiece. So if I give my 3 kids in my will, they get a $100,000 exemption apiece, and then they pay 1%. So the place where it gets hefty is if you're gifting money to friends, so I get it, it's a tax on money that's already been taxed, but when you're talking about taking a tax from a different place, taking a tax on money you're gifting to friends, might be less of an impact than raising taxes someplace else, for instance. So you got to think about the whole picture, not just this one little piece.
You got to slay one dragon at a time,
Exactly. I did want to just
We'll
say
let them
one
figure
other-
out that inheritance tax. I will tell you this.
It's this one.
I'll probably get shot in the halls of NACO, but I have never supported inheritance tax.
Right.
I have never supported it. I think it's the most unfair tax that exists in statute. And it also provides state officials a disingenuous argument that county, local governments are money grubbing. And we have absolutely nothing to do with the inheritance tax. We didn't write the law. We get the proceeds, I get that, but it's not our doing. But we get blamed for it pretty good.
Yeah.
And so, I hope they figure it out. And if they figure it out, that's great. That's a good win for taxpayers, because no money should be taxed twice. And then if they do get it figured out, then the next dragon we'll slay will be the underfunded. I don't want to say unfunded, because they're not all unfunded. They're underfunded costs that get dropped down on local political subdivisions, that have a lot of ramifications to our ability to provide services that we have a responsibility to provide, so.
I did want to just say one other thing. I just wanted to thank you all for your guidance on LB 1080. And with this team and Caitlin Annie Gosnold Parker working together. You know, you've done a good job when Senator Brewer says, don't look at my bill, look at Senator Sanders' bill, which is what he said. So I know you guys did a great job, and we appreciate Annie's legal guidance there, and that gave us a bill that should get across the finish line this year, hopefully. So I appreciate everybody's hard work there.
Great, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Look forward to
Yep, thank you.
upcoming session. Okay, well, that wraps up 6.1. I think we have to go back to 5.7, which is Resolution 259.
Good
Lonnie
afternoon.
Moore,
Yes,
Chief Deputy County Attorney.
That's me. Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to research that question. I apologize I hadn't gotten back to you today.
Sorry. for messing around.
That's okay. You asked two questions. One was, when is our lease done with the storm chasers? And also, if they terminate that lease early, are they required to pay us back on the capital improvements? The lease ends in 2034, and I'm going to take the long road on that second question. So we have an original contract with the Storm Chasers. Back then, it was Storm Chasers back then, it's Alliance Baseball now. That speaks to capital improvements. They're not required to pay us back for capital improvements under that contract. Subsequent to that, we've had 7 addendums to that contract. One of those addendums addresses improvements for soccer, and under that, they are required to pay us back an additional amount each year. So although these particular capital improvements for the Major League Baseball improvements aren't subject to like an early payout or repayment before the end of the lease term, there are certain improvements that are.
So just the soccer improvements?
Just the soccer.
Okay. Okay, thank you for researching that.
Of course.
on a quick
Thank you.
basis there.
Okay. Any other comments or questions about Resolution 259? Motion, please. Okay, I'll make, I don't understand the hesitation, but I'll make the motion to approve Resolution 259.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Kelly and a second by Commissioner Mixon. Discussion? Please vote. If you can. I still don't, oh, there we go.
Ayes 3, nays 1, absent Warren.
Okay, all the agenda items have been addressed as published, and the Board of Commissioners is adjourned. Thank you for coming.